guys, we are here for the LCK. That was a bit of a surprise. We don't want to waste any time getting into the games that are going to be played today. Some sick matchups, some fantastic ones even, Papa. Will be SANDBOX up against Afreeca to start us off. Two of the teams that have been finding a lot of success nowadays.
And it says a lot about where LCK Spring 2019 ended and where Summer has picked up, that actually in a week when SKT and Griffin play, my featured matchup is this one. It's SANDBOX versus Afreeca. It feels like these are the teams that people should be looking at right now if you want to gauge where Korea is really at. And I feel like in the past, that's almost never been the case. It was always, look at one of the telecom teams, look at the Rocks Tigers, but we don't have any of those teams right now contending in a big way. Those teams are much more on the wane. Yesterday, we saw just as much of a kind of generational change as you could ever imagine, with Griffin demolishing some of those big names of the past. Today, we get a lot of young guns. Kingzone playing in our second series, have a lot of young guns as well. Our first series should be aggressive, should be proactive, and should be a sign of where Korea is really at.
This is the day to watch, right? You look over on the left side, you'll see three of the teams that we do have playing tonight right away in a row. Kingzone, Afreeca, SANDBOX. Of course, Afreeca versus SANDBOX. The two teams that are tied exactly are going to be going head-to-head. And it really raises the questions nowadays. Who is going to be that top team? Obviously, Griffin is coming back in a big way after a bit of a slow start here in summer. But Kingzone is back, and Afreeca and SANDBOX are really the teams that are trying to go above and beyond and be even better compared to last season.
You have you and I here, people who've been front row for Korean League of Legends for multiple years, and you ask us, where do you put your money on with those three teams qualifying for Worlds? Remember, two teams go straight into the World Championships. This year, Korea will have to go through the play-ins. If you ask me, who's definitely in those three? I would say smart money, Griffin, because they already have the circuit points. After that, you could definitely think about Kingzone, but everything else is up in the air. Apart from Griffin's having the points and also backing up their recent performances, knowing where these teams at is so difficult. Also understanding some of these translations of the Korean memes a little bit difficult.
So KingBox and King Freeca.
I'm upset. I'm already upset. You're making me very upset with what you're saying.
I already feel uncomfortable a little bit after that. The only teams that defeated the first place teams, Griffin and Kingzone.
But we get the Frankenstein and Frankenstein's creator situation going on here. The man who sat behind Kiin, our best top laner last year, for the entire year not playing, and now has lit up the charts of top laners. Summit and Kiin are right up there. Khan has fallen away a little bit, even if he's been fine. He hasn't been Kiin and Summit level. We've got some of our big guns of the top lane, and kind of hard to move past that as the featured matchup, even though jungle, again, it's names people don't know very well if you only tune in to the big teams, but Dread versus OnFleek is a premier matchup as well.
Absolutely. Can't wait to be jumping into that one. We have some fun stats here on screen. We have the amount of dragons taken. It feels like Afreeca's luck is a little bit better. They have a lot of Infernal Drakes. Wouldn't be surprised if that is the most Infernal Drakes by any team, as they're also first in dragons per game.
Damn, if they were allowed to go to the casino, and guys, Koreans can't actually go to the casino. That's not how it works. If you're Korean, you're not allowed to go to any sort of gambling emporium. But if they could, Afreeca definitely should be going there. Or, Valdez, are SANDBOX overdue for Infernal Drakes today? That's the way you got to think about it here, right? Because they've been running hot, but you don't run hot forever. Your luck changes, Valdez, so this is a tricky one to think about.
Yeah, well, we'll see if that gambler's fallacy does come to light tonight, as we are going to take a look at some of the highlights here. As Dove, he's got the fleet footwork going. He didn't take the rune, but he dodges pretty much everything. And SKT left with egg on their face for that game.
SANDBOX able to get over SKT in pretty straightforward fashion. Baron contest comes in, Smite comes in, they kill Clid before it hits 1,000. SANDBOX have been proactive, and they also have been making moves when they need to, and that's what we're looking for from our best teams in Korea. A lot of good performances, but Summer usually dominates the conversation when SANDBOX play.
Sky has been a name we've been uttering for a little bit less than his opponent that will be in the top lane. We're going to be taking a look at some Afreeca highlights here as well. Nice little dive down in the bottom side. Senan with the good tanking. And again, this is up against Kingzone, which was a very close matchup actually that Afreeca ended up taking.
Afreeca had undeniably been better in summer, but they only really arrived when they beat Kingzone, right? Kingzone was the big scout. They took down in a 2-1 victory. That was after game number 1 was weird and wonderful with Cardless Pike and Aatrox shenanigans and a Kingzone victory. Reverse sweeping Kingzone is a big deal for the Afreeca Freecs. And with their youthful lineup, you imagine they're rolling back the five they've used exclusively in the summer season. You know these guys will come out and brawl with you, and you can either get in the mud with them and then have to deal with some young man mechanics, or you can try to corral them. SANDBOX have Joker, who is that old age shot caller that is always making all the moves when we listen in. But he's going to have to be at the top of his game. And speaking of the top of your game, is that enough to be at the top of your game and beat Kiin? Because right now, Kiin is taking on all comers and dispatching them summarily.
Absolutely, and this is the obvious highlight matchup, the key player comparison here. Some interesting stats is, you know, we do have a bunch of games under our belt, both of these teams with 4 played so far. Kiin 11th in CS there per minute. As, you know, we have some subs coming into the top side, but even with that low CS per minute, still has the highest KDA in the top lane.
I think a lot of that also is that what do you do against Afreeca? Well, you're like, damn, we can't allow this guy to get ahead. So he doesn't get every CS because it's a jungler closer to CS than him sometimes. Go to the lineups here between SANDBOX and Afreeca. As expected on both sides, no changes. Joker in the back. I'm liking this dapper new jacket that SANDBOX has rolled in to also accentuate the jerseys they brought out in summer. SANDBOX Gaming, Afreeca Freecs, these teams right now summarily in the discussion for Worlds qualification. Both of them look very likely to, at minimum, be a team you don't want to face in the gauntlet.
It's going to be interesting to see how both of these teams come along as the season does near its end. We're nearing the halfway point here as a lot of teams are just about playing their 5th matchup in this week. It's week 4, I believe, or maybe week 3.
Week 3, come on. Keep up, Valdez.
Still trying to get my bearings here. But yeah, halfway through the first round at least, as we're taking a look at the 5 that are always going to be coming out here. And a big cheer from the audience as well. We're pretty much packed out here already, whereas for some other matchups, we don't get filled up until we, you know, get started in the game.
And it should be noted that a big cheer for Afreeca is not necessarily the norm. They've had a lot of different image problems over the years because of controversies and because of struggling performance. They went over to Rift Rivals. Remember, they were the team sent out in game number 5 and weren't able to beat RNG, as Rift Rivals is coming up in Europe and North America next week, and then Korea, China, and the LMS region the week afterwards. So Rift Rivals on the mind. Afreeca Freecs getting that popularity back just by playing really easy on the eye League of Legends. SANDBOX versus Afreeca should be a really fun one. I'm so excited to see Afreeca re-debut for the week. We haven't seen SANDBOX or Afreeca in week number 3, and Afreeca Freecs, to me, they're a really honest team, super young team with no 2-year veterans on the roster. The closest team debuting the 2nd round robin of summer in 2017. So a lot of new names here, a lot of aggression. They play like just a really strong pickup team coming out of solo queue, styling on people, so you can corral them into bad decisions. You can also just get blitzed.
I feel like you can kind of say that both ways here as we do get the zoom-ins on 2 key players that we might see here tonight. Very curious how Dread is going to do up against OnFleek. I think that Dread is more of that all-out aggression, whereas OnFleek a little bit more of a smart player, I would say, as the headsets are going on. We're nearly ready to jump into pick ban already for game number 1. Very excited to get this day started, as it really doesn't get much better than this, at least for the first round. So go out there, tell your friends to get off of Teamfight Tactics and watch this stream, because we got some great League of Legends coming your way.
Really excited for this one. Should really, hopefully, live up to the hype. Joker looking, he's ready for his smiles, he's ready to come up and engineer a plan. Even the draft plan here is interesting, because in week number 3, the metas continue to evolve. We don't necessarily get all the standbys that were normal. And there's a couple of trends we've been highlighting that we wonder whether 3 days into week number 3 will be addressed. We'll bring it up again in-game, but those 5 to 6 minute Drake takes should be expected once again. And I wonder if the counter plans are being rolled in just yet.
You'd have to imagine both these teams love their dragons, very high dragon per games. First and second, slightly in favor of Afreeca, as we're just past the 5 p.m. mark. Should be getting into this in just a moment. Haven't heard any word about any delays, so everybody's got their headset on. Dove in the mid lane, going to be going up against Ucal, who is definitely back in a big way in the mid lane. Had a pretty rough spring, but now he's singing the blues, or not the blues rather, but the very joyous songs whenever he does get on the Rift, and has been a key part of this team once again.
And it was a two-part thing. It was, is Ucal going to be present? Because he wasn't even playing in spring season. The answer has been yes, exclusively has played in summer. But he's back also because we're getting those swag performances. We're getting the Talia bans almost every game to respect that one as well. So a lot of hype around the Afreeca Freecs, a lot of hype around this man. Summit's trying to engineer the downfall of his old sensei.
He's got a little smirk going here. As, yeah, best top laner, Summit here to win.
Got you there.
Kind of looks like Joker. I wasn't sure at first, but
it's definitely Kiin on the left, and
yeah,
Ucal in the middle there. Didn't even need to read the name to recognize him.
Summit was his substitute player, as we did already highlight. You and I, Pop, are on the ball with that. As looks like it's time, guys. We're going to be jumping into game number 1, pick ban, right away here. Let's see how it's going to go. SANDBOX going to be starting here on blue.
Afreeca Freecs versus SANDBOX on patch 9.12. Last 2 teams to debut on this patch. Important piece of information. Mordekaiser still globally banned, so no sightings of the Mord and no Mortal shenanigans for us to look forward to. The Karma straight away banned again. This champion has been perma-banned since game number 1, which was a loss, ironically, for Nagari on that Karma. It's taken off the board. Lots going to be left open, though, when Tom Kench and Karma are starting to hit the ban list. Silas obviously is kind of gone now because of a very heavy-handed nerf on patch 9.12. No Rise this week either just yet. There is always going to be some stuff coming back, and there's definitely some stuff open. Sona is up, Lux is up, Yuumi is up, a lot is up. What does SANDBOX want?
Sejuani, maybe. It's not necessarily that OnFleek pick, but it is so just solid right now. It has a really high win rate, and I also like that ban, that respect ban up against Summit here in that top matchup. Going to take that Jace away, as Sejuani will be locked in.
Do you first round Talia here and use it as a flex between Dread and Ucal? Nope, you just lock in Kiin straight away. Hey. Dread is one of the legendary Korean solo queue Kiin players. He's bringing it out. We're getting Kiin versus Sejuani. This isn't IG, this is Afreeca Freecs.
You gotta love it. You talked about the young kids with the attitude, not scared to get down and dirty. And that's exactly what Kiin likes to do. Do go for the follow-up of the Lux, which is also very common nowadays, whereas SANDBOX is going to go to the Bullet Hell combo. We got Lucian and Yuumi back together in the bottom lane.
Oh, baby, we're seeing some aggression in this draft already. Loving it. Big fan of the Bullet Hell duo. Best played so far by Viper and Lehens. We're still looking for a Yuumi to be on Lehens' level. He has been just the best globally by far. Wonderful player on the Yuumi, and Griffin have been so good around those picks. The resulting AD carry that falls out is going to be the Ezreal priority on that champion. Still pretty high this week. Seen a lot of first-round mid laners, but none actually in this draft, so a little bit of an adjustment there. Talia does loom as a very likely ban against Afreeca, and actually Zoe is one of those matchups that Talia sometimes struggles with pre-Banshee Veil, so Zoe going to be the first ban against Dove.
Hey, you do have to lean that way. We'll wonder if SANDBOX wants to take it away, or maybe Dove is going to pull something out here. Dove, not necessarily one of these guys that I think is going to try to go for like an assassin or a crazy pick, but very curious for sure.
If you ask me kind of player-wise, what's the matchup? I say Akali versus Taliyah, right? Because Dove is an Akali player as a Summit, and Ucal is the Taliyah player of note. We've seen Akali bans this week, even after all the power downs, but the LeBlanc going to be another champion to potentially free up something like a Taliyah. I mean, Ucal's been playing this his whole career, so it's no surprise that he'll definitely be thinking about that, but there's always the next level possibilities. Sejuani open, Sejuani taken, Kiin instant response, so you know that Afreeca were prepped for that one. What else is SANDBOX prepped for? From the Afreeca Freecs, they ban away the Azir. The Taliyah is looking pretty tantalizing. They don't have to lock it in now. They do need to lock in a solo lane.
Yeah, Taliyah, you've been singing it for a while now. It seemed very obvious, especially after the way the bans went. But SANDBOX seemed relatively comfortable. Generally, if you're on the ball with that and it comes out flying, then I would have to imagine that SANDBOX knew it was coming as well. So let's see what Dove will have in response.
This could be Lucian mid against Taliyah. We talked about how the duo lane's already been locked in, but we already saw Kuzan play it, and this is a soft confirmation that we're seeing Lucian mid versus Taliyah this time out. It's a little cool draft ruse is pulled by SANDBOX. Again, everything so far in terms of what was locked in is expected, especially the Sejuani Taliyah kind of power picks that were open in this draft for the respective teams. So we do get a different Yuumi lane. The bullet hell is abated until the team fights, I guess.
What is... No, really?
Oh,
okay.
The double flex. We're going to see the Sejuani top lane in this one. So Sejuani top played a lot in solo queue by Sword. Ignite teleport. We'd stopped talking about it because it never got selected. There is the flex. Very interesting thing going on here. Now Kiin is dealing with someone that he doesn't have an easy matchup into in the Xin Zhao. All right, SANDBOX. The next levels. We wondered, isn't it suspicious that the Taliyah was open?
Yeah,
It seems like SANDBOX were ready for the Kiin and ready for the Taliyah.
It's just like they're reading each other at the same time, and I can't wait now for the debut of the Sejuani top here in the LCK. We also have the very interesting response here from Kiin. You don't see all too much top Victor nowadays, but he was nodding his head. You know that he's played against this in solo queue and scrims, and I'm curious to see how he does on that pick up against the top Sejuani.
Now think about what the top Sejuani is going to do against a ranged, annoying, chip damage and push top laner. She's going to struggle a little bit, right? She can push out a little bit with the W, but she has great gank assist, and turns out Sejuani plus high damage melee champion has always been a duo. It just, you couldn't get Xin Zhao and Sejuani on the Rift at the same time because they both occupy the same role. Now you can, and Kiin. Honestly, a lot of Dread's work here is going to be power farming, but also counter ganking top side, because otherwise, whenever you see Victor lose his flash, think back to Khan at MSI, Victor can't have the same laning pattern, so there should be a whole lot of attention around top, and it was already a featured matchup.
Yeah. This is, it's pretty unbelievable, guys. We did not expect this many mind games and this many weird picks coming into today, but you can kind of take pictures of both sides and upload that on Twitter and get a lot of likes with just saying, what's going on here, guys? And that's the kind of draft we'd like to see for game number one. As some people have been questioning some of the Korean teams' drafts, well, it feels like Afreeca and SANDBOX are currently on another level. Let's see how these two drafts are going to butt heads here in game number one. Here we go, guys. Game number one. Not wasting any time.
We're booking it.
Afreeca's getting in there already.
Afreeca want to get as much information as possible with all of the shenanigans pulled here. The jungle matchup changed so quickly for Dread in this game. Famous matchup against Sejuani, where someone like Ning, probably the most prominent Kiin player, after, I guess, Cap sported out in the mid lane back in the day and tried to make that a thing, or it was nerfed. Loves this matchup because Sejuani is a health tank. You go Rast, and guess what? There's a big sack of health for you to heal back from. Your Q does crazy damage in Rast form, but then you turn over to the Xin Zhao, and Xin Zhao actually plays into the worst tendencies. As Dove is going to get a nice advantage in here. Trade it back. Nice little skirmish there between two mechanically skilled players. They're both going to have to chug corrupting potion stacks and keep going. The matchup now against the Xin Zhao is tricky because what is Kiin not good at? Not good at ganking early. Doesn't have a lot of gank presence before transformation. That's Xin Zhao's strongest point. And whether it's counter ganking or not being in position, Xin Zhao can do a lot before Kiin is really ready to go.
That is going to be the goal here. As I mentioned, OnFleek, a pretty intelligent jungler, likes to get things going pretty early, but as it is pushing in the bottom lane, he is not going to go for that. He's actually invading into the blue buff as Dread is going for a full clear up in his red side jungle.
Not really skirmish against the Xin Zhao either, so you go full red side clear on Kiin to get a guaranteed level 3, and then you say, ooh, I'd love a blue, and ooh, I'd love a Rift Scuttle. And that's something that Xin Zhao will be aware of. Just took the blue buff, so it seems like Xin Zhao wants to go to his top side jungle and guarantee a 3 buff purely off matchup. This is an implied 3 buff of, well, you wouldn't dare kind of 3 buff scenarios. There's a lot of next level opportunities here as well.
Certainly a lot of that going on as Dread
gets the bad news.
Yep. Exactly what he did get there, as now he's just got a back on a ward and not feel too happy about himself. Dove versus Ucal in the mid lane. Ucal chugging that last bit there as Dread has to come in and actually help him push the lane.
Yep, that's what it's about here, and he's going to take a lot of free damage to make this happen. His jungle camps are going to be respawning a little bit later after these two go down on the red side. And he also wants a chance to have a pushed lane in order to get a scuttle with some backup. Even that's going to be tricky, so a lot of incentive for Dread to hit the lanes, because remember, he just wants to transform as well, and that's very unlikely to happen if he doesn't start brawling soon.
You can see that actually because of that maneuver, Dove won the trade 1v2, and then he left, I think it was just one minion in the mid lane, so a slight push and a good position for him in the mid lane. It's going to be hard for Ucal to get back on time and actually push that ahead, so good start already for that flex Lucian into the mid lane. Goes back and buys a cull, as he's very confident about the way that lane is going.
The reason why it's still a successful gank, though, is there was always the potential that Dove with lane control, as Dread walks up, try to contest the smite down. If Dove kept lane control the entire time, maybe you never even get the chance to get one scuttle, right? You just keep the laning phase longer and longer, keep Talia cooped up, and get double scuttle as well. So they still are able to get Dread one scuttle, and walks up, contests the Raptors. These are good little moments for Dread, who, if you know anything about Kiin, pre-transform, the thing he's best at is killing Raptors. He's very strong against that camp in particular.
Yeah, former dinosaur himself. This is just where he loves to be. That's the thing about Kiin. So he's going to get them once again and just go for it back here. And we've been seeing a little bit of the bottom lane. That's going to be interesting once that does hit level 6. You get a lot of movement speed, of course, with the heal, the zoomies from the Yuumi. And curious to see how it will do. Maybe they can lock down that Lux.
We should talk also at the top side, because this is Sejuani top for the first time in the LCK. A pick that's been threatened in solo queue a lot. Sword playing a lot of it with Ignite in the past. This is going to be Flash Teleport, so some more safety. A matchup where early levels, before you get any AP items or you get your first Hex Core, Victor does chip damage, but it doesn't actually force you out of lane. However, after that, obviously, things can go a lot worse. Something I want to also speak about is Kiin as a player. His ability to freeze minion waves and just get huge CS leads in recent weeks has been another reason that Afreeca have looked so hot. And that's why Summit takes the first back, teleports aggressively, and tries to stop the freeze as mid lane.
Oh boy, Ucal, you're in so much trouble. See you later, first blood, as OnFleek getting that action going already on the Xin Zhao.
There's a jungle champ difference with the TP. They're going in.
Look at this. Dread going 1v2. He is going to get the win. And aiming from the bottom lane there to help out and push Dove back.
That's really big. The TP needed to stop this just being a 2-for-1 overall. They get a 1-for-1 out of it, and Dread gets to work towards his transformation as well. Really good call from Afreeca. It required the investment from aiming, but he was on a back timing, so was the enemy bot lane. Pretty clean overall.
Hey, gotta love that. Both these teams not gonna be avoiding the action already, and some good ideas here as let's see how this gank went down.
Again, jungle difference is usually an insult against the player, but this is also the champions coming into play. Xin Zhao comes in, Ucal too far up, taken down. But then you actually have the mentality of players. Dread is a player who's gone on record and said, I am a LPL-style jungler. I take my notes from the LPL. The inspiration I have from LCK jungling is Rox Tiger's 2016 Peanut, when he was buffless, when he was super aggressive. This is his mindset shining through his top side.
Is going to land that ultimate, and now Kiin in a bit of trouble. Can he get out of this one with OnFleek right on top of him, just dancing outside of that one? Kiin still going to go for the flashes. Ucal trying to help him out here, but the kill will come down there as OnFleek will pick it up.
Kiin trying to hold on to the flash till there was an ally to help him, till there was light at the end of the tunnel. Still, Ucal can't come in and change anything. The gank assist from a Sejuani on Xin Zhao we already talked about, but the permafrost synergy and just the glacial prison is insane, and now the flash is down, and the camping might begin.
I mean, that's exactly what they were looking for. That's kind of that amazing setup and the perfect timing, actually, as well from OnFleek, where they have the blast plant. They can get on top of him through no vision. Kiin, of course, wasn't just able to walk in and put down a ward on the blast plant, so everything really came together. That's the one where you catch him. Can they follow up with this flash down, as you mentioned, is another thing here, as SANDBOX say, well, we're winning in mid and bot, so we are going to move on to the streak and just take it in vision.
And that's actually not always the way about it. It's not often that you're winning in the top side of the map and you can also just enter bot lane and say, oh, we'll have this as well, thank you very much. But with this much power and priority, with their smart draft, where they basically engineered a couple of counter picks and a very gankable top side, they are in a scenario where they can just roll places, and whether it's Xin Zhao Sejuani synergy or just Lucian and Xin Zhao damage in the early game, you gotta respect it. And that respect is meaning that SANDBOX is smashing and grabbing everything except a meaningful gold lead at this present point.
Just a little bit so far. The Mountain Drake is going to be nice, of course, as this matchup definitely interesting. You would think dashing over the rocks would be a problem, but generally Dove is going to be quite okay as long as he can dash around the rocks. The Q that Talia does throw out definitely does feel pretty good for the Lucian in the mid lane.
Red has Warrior in chat, and again, really wants to brawl against melee champions to get Rast. Shadow Assassin is stronger than it's ever been before, but it's still not prioritized highly. I'd love to see it, and it does fit his playstyle as a kind of point of conversation, but the extra CC would also be very helpful for this comp that Rast provides. Still, Dread doesn't find anything, and it's another timer that's actually working against the Afreeca Freecs.
It was interesting to see the maneuvers there in the top lane as Kiin was being a little bit too obvious, and Summit was like, nope, not biting that bait. And then the second that Kiin realized that Summit wasn't going to bite the bait, he moved into the river and said, yeah, the jig is up. You know my jungler's here. I'm going to clear out your control ward, get what I can. So, nice little maneuver there on the top side.
Afreeca just, they feel like they've been thrown off their equilibrium, and it's kind of a cool data point to get. Remember, we've talked about how this team has been very promising. They beat Kingzone to kind of announce their arrival, but because they don't have those big shot callers and because they play super aggressively, there's always the chance that they fall too far behind and just can't actually come back in a difficult game. So in moments like this, they really need to stand up, and No-Face coaching. He's the veteran, right? The veteran coach behind them, the coach of the Rox Tigers, who went over to EDG and had success. He's the one that they need to look to, and we'll see if some of the things they've set the team up with can bear fruit in this scenario, because right now, it does feel like SANDBOX controls 65% of the map, even if the gold lead doesn't scream.
Oh, sure we'll get there soon, as Ucal really trying to go into this trade. Not sure about this one. Does have the barrier, but in the end does have to use both of his summoners as the Ignite does come out. As I mentioned before, as long as you don't dash on the rocks, you should be good to win that one as Lucian.
And if you don't ever go defensively, if Dove is fancying his damage, he's pressed the attack Lucian, he should. You're not going to get hit by the seismic shove either. So hard to predict when you're playing this aggressively. So another trade won by Dove, and they go top side. Here we go again.
Oh boy, and no flash here for Kiin. Does have the stopwatch, but, well, the follow-up is going to be easy As, okay, double stun, trying to come up here with Senan now.
Are we pulling the trigger here, Dread? Are we pulling the trigger?
We do have the wall as well from Ucal, but they decide against it as Dread, oh boy. He's gonna go into the ult here just to avoid that stun, but has to end up flashing. And you talked about the rhythm kind of being jiggled up here, as they definitely look off the rhythm in this game, at least to start off, to the Afreeca Freecs.
In the mid lane, SANDBOX move up their troops to continue to apply pressure. Dread wants to brawl, but not use his flash defensively. We talked about the bot side objective and SANDBOX were in the lead. Well, they found something else they like. It's an 11-minute Rift Herald, and with the duo lane here, what's Afreeca to do?
It's definitely, you know, the draft aside, coming into this game, we expected some stuff, and it feels like all of that went exactly according to plan. The winning lane in the mid lane, the ganks up in the top side, the follow-up into using that priority to get the Rift Herald. SANDBOX are on a roll now. We'll see if they can get even more gold from that Rift Herald before 14 minutes.
The nice thing for SANDBOX is even just not focusing on the ruse they pulled with some of their flex picks. Consider that when it comes to team comps, when it comes to kind of the 5v5s, the games can often devolve into whatever nice shenanigans you pulled. They have a frontline tank, they have initiation, which can be backed up by the final chapter from the Yuumi as well. Meanwhile, Victor top, his fallback, if he's not just pushing and prioritizing lane, you know, it's kind of being a backliner, right? The Rast, when it comes in, can try to frontline, but isn't an initiator. The Talia, Ezreal can be conditional. Mid lane, speaking of Talia.
Ucal, he goes in, and let's see if Dread can actually land anything here. Doesn't have his ultimate. Tujat Barrage goes wide, and without flash, Ucal had moved into the river to take out that Rift Scuttler, and he got punished on Vision. Just taken out entirely, as now here comes Shelly in the mid lane, trying to push their advantage.
Stunned up for now. Where's that charge? It does get poked out. That's actually pretty big here. It does deny the turret from basically being all but dead instantly.
Yeah. Nice little move there, but for sure, SANDBOX are not too worried, as a huge final chapter is going to come in. He gets two of them, and OnFleek just pokes the Kiin in the back for that extra kill, and they're just turning into this one as Sejuani wants to join on in, and Dove is going to be able to dash away with the help of Yuumi. But did they go too far, as now it's Summit against 3 and make that 4. It's going to flash and dash away, though. This is incredible, as somehow SANDBOX are able to get away.
I really thought it was boar hunting season there. I really thought Sejuani would die, but able to trick out so many different gap closers and make it out of that one. Also some great work on Joker for his sustain and also final chapter initiation. Sivir never joined, so they couldn't actually get the win. That seemed really set up for SANDBOX to just rout Afreeca Freecs, and Afreeca on the back end get an objective more than they've got all game. They finally get an Infernal to their collection.
They've got a large collection, their 12th Infernal of the LCK Summer. It was good we got that stat before to know. They love rolling and playing for Infernals, and let's see how Ucal gets caught here.
Now this is on Vision, notice it, and yet OnFleek isn't going to be anything other than aggressive at every moment, just goes straight in. This secondary engage, though, actually ends up being too bold because Victor's already walking down. Ezreal teleports straight in. TP had already been used by Sivir to go bot lane. So the confident secondary engage, not the burst flash over the wall engage, actually is where SANDBOX do trip up on what has been mostly calculated aggression in the first 14 minutes.
The incredible escape here, as at least they weren't going to give them any more deaths. Of course, because of that play, they lose the Infernal, but somehow, you know, they could have lost a lot more. It was looking that Dove was going to go down if not for the shield from Joker, and then, of course, Summit getting away from 4 people with the surprising mobility of the Sejuani. So, nicely played, at least, to make the most of a scenario that they got themselves into that wasn't so great.
Speaking of scenarios that kind of forced, it's double AP lanes, as Summit's by here, obviously. Dread just wants to hit abilities on a melee champion in order to help the Rast calculation, but the fact that he misses there is unfortunate. They lose a turret on the bot side as well, so that gank, even for brawling and passive reasons, doesn't go to plan.
As, yeah, Summit's just going 1v2 here as well.
And he gets to stack MR against 2 AP side laners, which is pretty big for the Sejuani. Getting tanked on a budget is always a tricky thing to do, and the patch, you know, 9-12 meta, so it's pretty significant for him that he can build an MR item and feel good about it.
That does feel pretty good for him. You look at the side of SANDBOX, there is a ton of attack damage in their lineup. Of course, Sejuani is going to have a little bit of that magic damage, but here's the push as SANDBOX move in. They make it happen with the help of the On the Hunt. Say, we're going to take this turret, and that they do.
Afreeca don't have really any frontliners, so pop the Sivir ult, you get a bit scared, you move back 200 units, and guess what? Your turret dies. So good cooldown conversion there coming through from SANDBOX. I'm just loving the fact that we're getting a Xin Zhao, and it's being used in a way that makes perfect sense based on the enemy's comp and their own comp. It's getting those early leads. They've had to fight hard for the 3,700 gold lead they have. SANDBOX is setting things up, and Afreeca, you can see, it's a struggle even for Victor, and he's usually a laning god.
You see the way Summit is playing that too. He and Kiin both know very well that Summit can blow him up if he gets a little bit too close, so he's just threatening that the entire time. As we do have Dove and Ucal now down in the bottom side, just brawling it out.
And it's even worse than it first appears, Valdez, because Kiin is behind in CS to a Sejuani. Nothing to do with the matchup, purely because of the gank assist that have gone top. And now we're getting to that awkward spot where Kiin's going Iceborne Gauntlet tanky build to do extra no damage to Sejuani, and Sejuani's already ahead of the curve.
Look at Dove just walk in the face of two of them and say, why are you even next to my turret? Get away, as he's able to ward them both off just by himself. Nicely done.
Victor being the one to be forced into something, I guess, representing a frontliner or a control champion with the Iceborne Gauntlet build doesn't really help the scenario here. So Afreeca does feel further behind than maybe even the gold suggests already. Afreeca trying to brawl though.
Yeah, you can see that Aiming really wanted to poke forward, whereas the rest of the team was reluctantly standing near him there for quite a while, but they weren't going to ultra commit to that one.
So no transformation for the Kiin, unless he has it on this back. 18 minutes, there was no transformation last time we saw. We're waiting to see that telltale Rast. Nothing so far.
He's just hanging out as boring old Kiin. Nobody wants to be that one, but let's see if he can eventually get here. As still just gonna farm those Raptors. That's all he's been doing all game long here, it feels, as Ghost now very confidently with the Yuumi in the mid lane, just going to be pushing this one out.
So off and off we go. SANDBOX controlling so much of the map, pushing them between lanes, putting in the priority here. And Afreeca know they could try and all in with Ucal, and if that goes wrong, maybe the game's just voids. They're trying to just answer waves and maybe just get camps for Dread, but here we go. Dread's in trouble.
Dread just hanging out and saying, no, I'm going to take my next camp, but they're denying it, as now Ucal, with the help of Aiming, trying to get on top of Dove here, but Dove is going to flash away. Summit and OnFleek looking to wrap around the backside, but taking a little bit too much poke damage. SANDBOX not quite ready to fully commit just yet, but Dread now looking to come in from behind. He is ultless, just there to help out his friends and push SANDBOX away. Nobody's going to go down just yet, as everybody tentatively just hanging around here, trying to posture and see if they can get any of the ultimates away. Kiin, as Kiin going to take a massive amount of damage on the backside, as Dove shows them who's boss.
Is it posturing, or are we going to get a further fight for the Mountain Drake? We see Xin Zhao turn onto it. Afreeca, Victor's out of the fight, but with TP, do we see a brawl now?
Oh, we already have that one Mountain, going to take it down so fast. And they're pushing on, but not quite ready to, as Kiin had to teleport behind them. Actually, no forward wards, so. And as you mentioned, he's not much of a frontliner, so they are just going to have to give away that Mountain Drake now, 2 to the side of SANDBOX.
Here we go, though. Afreeca can't really get an answer. And there it is, 20 minutes, 38. The transformation finally comes into Rast. It's possible that he had the Shadow form earlier and waited the extra time because a lot of ranged champions on the side of SANDBOX, and he was trying to desperately get damage onto the melee champions earlier. Definitely a lot later than he would have wanted. We've seen it far, far earlier than this, right? And that is a change. It is more power on Afreeca's side. Rast is objectively a way better champion than Kiin with no transformation, especially, and to most people's argument, especially in pro play, the Shadow Assassin Kiin. But there is that transformation. Still no second item though, still no Black Cleaver that I'm sure he's working on.
We'll see how this does go. He's pretty consistently able to check the Baron Pit, at least, with that wall-walking ability as Summit. He does a lot of damage to turrets with that build, with the Demolish as well. He's going to take out that Tier 2 relatively easily.
Aiming.
As now Aiming has to flash away. Not even just Arcane Shift, and now, unfortunately, trying to bait into this one, but they're looking to turn here onto Ghost. They're gonna burst him down and get the Yuumi too! But can SANDBOX turn this around? They're able to get the bottom lane of Afreeca. Now it's 3-on-3. Summit trying to lead the charge. There's the one stun into 2, and OnFleek goes forward. They're gonna take out the Taliyah already and make that a 3-on-2, but Kiin, with a lot of health here, thinking about poking, but is not going to be able to do it all alone.
Full health Victor and also a healthy enough Kiin. You always have to be so careful with your calculations. A little bit of armor in the build now, so you don't just explode to the Rast Q, but the flash necessary from OnFleek to get the gap closed, to make it a 3v2. Aiming made a big mistake. He used Arcane Shift earlier in Vision in order to just poke and farm, and thus had to flash instantly. So when this collapse happens, the TP still coming in from the Sejuani, the Sivir dead at the start, and that's why it was so damn competitive between Afreeca and SANDBOX.
And they get the Sivir and the Yuumi, just taking them both out there in one burst. But this re-engage by SANDBOX was quite nice, just barely enough damage to pop the Taliyah on the backside with those couple of ults they were saving.
So, where does this leave us? 5,000 gold lead to SANDBOX. Been so impressed with their drop and the flexes they made. The picks that seemed obvious for Afreeca to answer turned on its head with some of the role swaps and the smart drafting. So for now, map control is stronger. Remember that SANDBOX do some core things of League of Legends easier than Afreeca. They face check way easier. This Sejuani obnoxiously tanky at 2 items. She walks up, they're trying to collapse on her, but this will take some time.
Okay, they get the seismic shove too. That's a nice amount of burst damage, but she's still got that stopwatch. But Afreeca trying to turn this one in, but Kiin not the best position, but doing a ton of damage and staying alive. But here's Dump from behind. He's gonna do so much poke damage with the culling and make a couple of them flash on the backside. It was looking good in the beginning. And now Summit trying to get on top of Kiin here with the help of Joker. It's aiming over the wall. Summit really just face tanking the entirety of that fight.
And that's only a possible play for SANDBOX and not Afreeca, because Summit is obnoxiously tanky. They can't take him down. He still wants to put up Vision so they can stop Baron. He's going for Senan on the backside.
Senan trying to get a little bit too close there. He's got a big shield. They're still trying to get in range.
It's Ghost.
As Ghost, oh boy. Aiming, trying to flex his muscles now, looking for that Q. Getting a little bit greedy in there, going close, but maybe they can get Summit on the backside. As the slow will come in, but bursting forward, here's Ezreal. As the action never stops in game 1 between SANDBOX and Afreeca.
You have to consider that both of the Rast and the Victor are excellent brawling champions when it's not a full-on 5v5 with ricochets taking them down as they come in terrain like this where they have a vision advantage. They're on the defense and SANDBOX on the offense. You get so many rotations of the Q, of Victor's spell. So we watch the chase here. You're chasing onto an obnoxiously tanky Summit with his stasis up, with a Yuumi in pocket. He will not die. Afreeca almost take a loss right at the start here, but this brawl goes on for the best part of a minute.
Dove flanking from the left side as, oh, no, we don't have time to talk about the replay. As Summit once again, he sees champion. He moves in on that champion, especially now that he's got Yuumi on his back for a lot of this game.
And Amy's got no mana, so he has to get the hell out of there and come back. There's no reason for him. And I feel like Summit catches little things, like seeing a Lux walk up and go, wait, her Aftershock is down. I actually burst this champion with my skills and just a modicum of damage with something like the Abyssal Mask. And hey, I can dive into this Ezreal. He's got no mana, so it's really good situational awareness from him to get some more little advantages. What does it get them? It gets some control ward, it gets them vision pushed up. SANDBOX with a Baron. It feels like they might be able to close the game because the AFK wave clear from Victor and Taliyah is largely removed from it by the Baron buff. But without the Baron, there's always a chance back into the game for Afreeca.
Absolutely, as a huge chunk there on a Joker. But again, that's just the cat. Not really a big deal as It was just a nice play by SANDBOX to move on in and get another chunk down onto that turret. Any move they can make to deny vision and gain some more map control will be nice.
Watching here, Summit on the sidelines.
Oh, Kiin pretty fast, but Summit trying to make that engage happen. Now Kiin a little bit split away as Xin Zhao trying to get into the action as they will get the King down. And Kiin's all alone on the backside, has to flash away. No escape for him. But at least the Xin Zhao does go down for the side of Afreeca. They are going to take that 1 for 2 for now, but here's Summit looking for the re-engage, but he's got to be careful, actually. A lot of poke damage here from the side of Aiming and Ucal. And they're not scared to go for this one, as True Shot Barrage is going to go terrifically wide. Not sure where he was looking to aim that one. Maybe going for the read, as with all that poking now, Afreeca just pushing on in for a bit.
By the end, after the frontliners are gone, it's no longer a frontline advantage. It's mobile poke damage. There's no Kiin this time, but Talia and Ezreal, if you keep moving, if there's no worked ground, there's so much damage on low cooldown that SANDBOX no longer can deal with. Watch the difference between the teams. It's the fact that Summit can dive in with OnFleek and zone multiple out, and SANDBOX can turn on to people a lot easier because the front line is a lot more brittle. It's a tank victor, and that's very much itemization tankiness and not kit tankiness, so Kiin goes down. But after that's over, when Summit is actually low health with no Warmog, so he can't just top up, Aiming, Ucal, and even Senan do a lot of chip damage, so that's where SANDBOX, with their short range, actually can hold them back.
They got all that chip, mid to long range damage, and also the giant Lux shield in the face of them. Ucal also blowing his barrier at that moment, so they were just like, if you guys want to fight, we'll go for it right now, as we're on the hunt now looking for some members, but that'll just be a nice little play to once again finish off that mid-tier 2.
Couple of ults thrown out. Mid lane inner turret important for the Baron, but it does feel like SANDBOX potentially close this game with Baron. Afreeca get that first Baron and get map control again. It's going to take the right team fight for SANDBOX. They just straight up lose Valdez. So even though this game was so well done in the early game, here's the fight attempt.
All right, trying to get on top of Aiming, but he will get away. But Senan not quite as lucky, as they will trade for the jungler. As now Summit, that front line getting ever so weak here as the Chaos Storm comes in. And another brawly trade here in the mid lane.
But the 1-for-1 trade is support for enemy jungle. So you'll take that if you're the Afreeca Freecs. Dread able to just life tank off Sejuani at the end of fights in order to keep brawling. Box back away. They can't threaten the Baron from a pick. They would want to because Xin Zhao is down. They can walk over it to it, and maybe you just try anyway. It's very quickly scouted out.
You can see just how fast they can do it, though, with just 2 seconds of damage. It's already down like 4,000 health from the top. As double check, actually, from the side of Afreeca. Blue Trinket and the True Shot Barrage. And now just trying to poke their head in, get some vision down. They will, but that ever looming threat from the double Mountain Drake will be there. The 2-man Baron is very easy to pull off for SANDBOX.
Important item completions coming. The Black Cleaver was late. Finally there for Dread. Second item at 30 minutes, but gets to add a stopwatch to it. And the stopwatch could be key. GA finished for the Xin Zhao to actually be a frontliner for longer. Also important. I want to see if Summit and OnFleek can fight, or at least force a fight, where Infinity Edge double carries can actually do damage behind it. So far that hasn't been possible. If the enemy's coming to Baron, maybe they'll face check and you'll get such a fight.
Seems to be what they're thinking about here, as not the deepest vision for the side of Afreeca, but so many slows in the front and forcing that flash away. But once again, Senan in an unlucky spot, and down will go the jungler too. And maybe this was the moment that SANDBOX was looking for, as Summit even is gonna survive. But a nice amount of poke damage onto Summit, but it is not quite enough for Afreeca to do much.
Now, Sejuani can go back, teleport back in, and they have this immediate 5v3 advantage. This is the moment where Afreeca probably is in no state to contest the Baron that SANDBOX have been craving for the better part of 10 minutes.
You can see the go pings here from the side of SANDBOX, actually. They don't want Afreeca to pick up the pieces, the crumbs. They don't want that Infernal Drake to go the way of Afreeca. So they move from the Baron straight over to the Infernal, make that Elder spawn. Let's take another look at how this went down.
Someone has to tank this one. Ucal flashes out, no flash on Lux. Sorry, you're dead. And
Dread actually just dies before he can get anything done in this fight as well. So it's finally that fight we talked about where Sivir and Lucian can fight with their front line rather than be in a good spot because they have a stronger front line fighting with it. Well, you're getting that damage on priority members and people die very, very quickly. Big moment for SANDBOX. It blows open the game in a lot of ways, and now Afreeca really may have been pulled to the seams too far because you got to walk up against the enemy bound. You got to contest it. They don't have that easy wave clear, and their front line is very brittle.
And you could just press a couple of ults here, especially the Sivir move on up as them, but Afreeca will counter with a couple of ults of their own. Chaos Storm does come down for a bit of wave clear, as they still do have that poke, but now it's a much different scenario. They're down 10,000 gold, and they're up against the Baron. Summit is going to throw one wide there, looking for Dread on the left side. As SANDBOX actually not able to get too much of an effective push here in the mid lane just yet.
It's a nice goal by Summit, but nothing else, unfortunately, on that one. SANDBOX being forced away. Afreeca just trying to use their numbers whenever they see anyone split and say, maybe we can get a collapse quickly, but it has to be quickly when it's against Baron buffs. So it's still SANDBOX pushing up all the lanes, and Afreeca with very little force in this comp.
Yeah, SANDBOX realizing, oh, we can just push 2 lanes and nearly kill aiming here in the mid lane. As, speaking of which, Dread also going to get super low, and everybody on the side of Afreeca struggling here. OnFleek with that ultimate, and now Summit super confident in the front line to just dash straight into all 5 of them. And honestly, he can, because everybody on the side of Afreeca is so damn low.
It's going to be split away, but Yuumi will join, waiting to bring up another minion wave. The Baron's still a minute here, and Afreeca, they haven't taken losses, but they've taken base losses for sure.
Now Dread just trying to force this fight. Nice seismic shove, but Dread a little bit too low to do much after blowing his own ult. And now they're turning onto aiming, actually, just where he stands. And look at the damage, the ricochets from the Sivir. And they actually turn it around. The double kill will go, but Sivir will die as Kiin is trying to stand tall here up against 4 members. He's got the Ezreal behind him. That's a huge amount of damage. And with that poke, aiming and the boys able to turn this one around.
They actually turned it around. That didn't seem possible because the turret was helping. They have so much chip damage. The front line goes down, and Afreeca lived to tell the tale.
We're going to have to take a look at that replay eventually, but you can see how this one started once again. Lux kind of dead where she stands.
Yes, didn't quite hit the Q there, but aiming actually gets turned on and almost dies himself. And Dread, so often this happens when you don't have an initiator on a Kiin comp and Kiin isn't ahead, kind of behind. Just gets caught in the crossfire and can't do much. And you just assume this is going to be a replay of the ending of the game. You feel like this is where it's going to end. Watch the turn here, because the turn actually is really smart. Dread, as you can see, deals so much from Sejuani. You think this is over, but it's a really smart turn onto aiming because Summit just nails him with the Glacial Prison. You think, okay, now this is going to be the moment where the game ends, but there's no pressure onto aiming Senan and Kiin, and their low health bars are only a threat from super minions, nothing more. Not enough range on these carries, outranged, and that long range keeps them alive.
I love the Zhonya's timing there from Kiin. I think it must be a Zhonya's by now. No, yeah, it is, as just baits them way into it. They lost their Sivir by then, and as you mentioned, just didn't quite have the damage to finish them off. A fantastic play to hold that Baron play down 10,000 gold so far to just the 1 inhibitor. But here comes SANDBOX once again, looking to make their push into the bottom side.
Remember, the turret still being up and the fight already having occurred is why there wasn't pressure on that backline. Recreating that, initiating like that is impossible for a comp like this. So Afreeca have to be so careful about where they fight.
Oh, here we go. Courageous Glory from the side of Summit, but Kiin gonna do that damage. A really nice wall to get Sejuani on the opposite side, but Ucal getting a little bit too low. He's forced to back away. Here's the slow and another perfectly timed Zhonya's. And Afreeca stepping up to the plate saying, get away from my friend. We're gonna actually push forward here and continue that fight. But they do have super minions knocking on the door of those Nexus turrets.
Seems like SANDBOX desperately need either a Warmogs on Summit or for him to have TP to come back in to be a frontliner a second time, because his first health bar is getting blown up by Kiin and friends on the side of Afreeca. He's still not strong enough to try to re-engage, and that's actually causing them some issues when it comes to attacking the hardest objectives, breaking base.
Dread here just scouting in the front. And I love casting these two teams. They never stop fighting as Double Mountain. They're going for the Elder here. It's getting way too low. No chance for Afreeca to try to steal that one. Ucal in a bit of trouble, but Summit now all alone on the right side. It looked like SANDBOX zoned out here by the Chaos Storm. And now they're in a bit of trouble as Kiin and the rest of the team. But the turn here from SANDBOX, is it going to be good? Looks like the answer might be no, as Kiin is going to go down though. And now they are going to find that Lux as the push on in from Ghost is going to be good enough for SANDBOX, and they will be able to rout the team of Afreeca.
The Joker reads the final chapter to aiming. He's stunned, he goes down, and this should be the moment where SANDBOX close it. Valiant attempt to hang on, but that's all it was by Afreeca Freecs.
An absolutely great try here from the side of Afreeca. I don't think there's going to be much that Dread can do. Let's see if he can. Nope. Well, that's going to be a dead Kiin. It was a nice pick. It was good for game number one, but didn't do what they needed it to, as SANDBOX are able to crush Afreeca here in game one.
What an interesting game number one between Afreeca Freecs and SANDBOX Gaming. It seemed from the start, from the draft ruse, we'd be in for a good one, and we get it here. And you know who I'm going to shout out as my MVP if I could would be one person who's got some personal business today. And it's not the Kiin versus Summit story. It wasn't even a spring story. Remember that Afreeca Freecs' old coach is back on SANDBOX Gaming this year. Comet joined this roster after being at Suning in spring season, and he's been one of the players attributed, or one of the coaches attributed, with bringing the new stuff out, with scouting other teams. It was he and Zephyr that were the brains trust in years past. He joined SANDBOX. They pull off a really creative draft here, and between the teams and also the coaching staff, the draft went a long way to being the deciding factor between SANDBOX and Afreeca in game number one.
It was an incredibly entertaining game here from pick ban all the way through. These teams just never stop fighting. Even Afreeca down 10,000 gold, they're like, no, we've got a chance here. If we can poke out the Sejuani, if we can kite them well enough, we can win this one. You can see Ucal nodding his head very confidently as just trying to go over the replay here in the booth. As it doesn't look like Afreeca is too shaken after the loss, at least.
They're in a good spot in terms of the ladder. They lost that first game to Kingzone, and then we wondered, all right, youthful team, you're all over. No, they came back steadfast in game number two. So high spirits, No Fade trying to rally his charges here and point out a couple of moments to address. That's going to be gameplay moments to pick ban. Will be oh so intriguing in game number two. SANDBOX pulled off a heist, but when it came to the actual game, it feels like the winner, while it wasn't confirmed, was kind of by far the best-dressed candidate with SANDBOX Gaming throughout what ended up being a 37-minute game.
And it was a brawly one between these two teams that are still tied at 3-1 so far. But the extra win now going to the side of SANDBOX. As we're going over some of the stats here, did end up that most of the Drakes, including the Elder, did go the way of SANDBOX. I felt like even though aiming did the most damage on the Ezreal, there were a couple of times where he got caught out, arcane shifting forward, and I was kind of left scratching my head. I feel like that kiting strategy relies on you being able to dodge the Sejuani ultimate, and I think a couple of times he got a little bit too antsy in those fights.
Well, he gets at least one do-over. We get a game number two, and it's one we're hyped about.
It's going to be a big one, guys, as can't wait to get into this one. Game number two of SANDBOX versus Afreeca is going to be coming right after this break, guys. So make sure you're telling everybody to get off all the other games. Come on down and watch us for game number two in just a bit.
먹자 형 먹자. 먹어. 빨라. 먹고 싸워. 노전이야. 천천히.
야 달려 높을.
달려.
거기까지
못 가죠.
나 나봐줘야 되는데?
이거
아이고 토르공.
빠지고.
나 빠져봐. 나 빼기 힘든데?
나 궁돌아.
야 들어가야 돼 이거.
가야 돼.
나 두통 맞았다.
잡았고.
싸워봐.
천천히.
나이스. 나 개잘했거든.
여기 이제
나 개잘했거든.
생각 폈고.
나 개잘했거든.
나이스. 끝났다.